In a land torn asunder by the cruel hand of war, where once the laughter of children echoed in the streets and the market thrived with the bustling of merchants, there stood a town now forgotten by time. The town, once a beacon of peace and prosperity, had been ravaged by a long and bitter civil war. Its people, forced to flee, scattered across the land, seeking refuge wherever they could find it. Among those who had been driven away was a young soldier named Kwame. Brave in heart and strong in spirit, he had fought valiantly in the war, but now, with the conflict over, his heart longed for the home he had not seen in many years. He was not alone in this yearning. Many others who had survived the war shared his desire to return to the place they once called home. And so it was that Kwame, along with a small band of fellow soldiers and townsfolk, set out on a journey back to their hometown. The road was long and treacherous, winding through forests that had grown thick and wild in the years of abandonment. They knew not what dangers lay ahead, but their hearts were filled with hope and a determination to reclaim their home. The journey had barely begun when the travellers encountered their first obstacle. The road, which had once been clear and well-trodden, was now overgrown with thorny bushes and tall grasses. It was as if nature itself had conspired to keep them from returning. The travellers took up their machetes and began to hack away at the undergrowth, their hands blistering and their arms growing weary. "Let us rest, for our strength wanes," said one of the older men, his voice heavy with fatigue. But Kwame, ever the leader, shook his head. "Nay, good sir, rest we may, but not here in the midst of this wild. We must press on until we find a safer place to pause." With Kwame's encouragement, they continued their toil, and after many hours, they broke through the thick brush and found themselves on a clearer path. But the respite was short-lived, for as night fell, they heard the distant roar of lions. The sound sent shivers down their spines, for they knew that in the years since the war, the wild beasts had grown bold, unafraid of men. "We must find shelter," said Kwame, his voice firm yet calm. "These lions are many, and we are but few." They searched in the darkness until they found a cave, and there they huddled together, their hearts pounding with fear. The night was filled with the sounds of the lions prowling outside, their roars echoing through the cave like thunder. But Kwame, ever vigilant, kept watch, his sword ready should the beasts attempt to enter. When dawn broke, they started out to continue their journey. Suddenly they were attacked by a pack of lions. The attack was so violent, as if the lions had intelligently strategized the ambush with the wisdom of men. The soldiers fought valiantly. They killed some of the lions, while the others escaped. The lions had gone, but the danger was far from over. As they continued their journey, they came upon an old bridge that spanned a deep and treacherous ravine. The bridge, once sturdy, had collapsed in the middle, leaving a gap too wide to cross. "We cannot pass this way," said one of the travellers, despair in his voice. "We must turn back." But Kwame, ever resourceful, would not be deterred. "Nay, we shall not turn back," he declared. "We shall find a way across." He surveyed the area and spotted a large tree growing near the edge of the ravine. With the help of the others, he cut down the tree and they fashioned it into a makeshift bridge. It was a perilous crossing, and many feared they would fall, but Kwame led the way, and one by one, they all made it safely to the other side. As they continued on their journey, the travellers came upon a sight that filled them with anger and sorrow. Along the road, where once there had been their humble farmlands belonging to their people, there were now new settlers, strangers who had taken up residence in the abandoned homes. "These invaders have claimed what is rightfully ours," one of the soldiers cried out in fury. Kwame held up his hand to silence the angry voices. "Peace, my friends. These people know not our struggle, nor do they understand the pain they have caused. Let us speak with them and see if they are willing to leave peacefully." But the settlers were not inclined to leave. They had grown accustomed to the land and saw no reason to abandon it. Tensions rose, and it seemed that blood would be shed once more, but Kwame, ever wise, proposed a different solution. "We shall offer them fair compensation," he said. "We shall give them what little we have, that they may find new homes elsewhere." The settlers, seeing the sincerity in Kwame's eyes, agreed to the terms. It was a hard bargain, for the travellers had little to give, but they knew that peace was worth more than gold. With the settlers gone, they continued on their way, their hearts heavy but their resolve unbroken. The road grew rougher as they trekked and neared their hometown, and the trials they faced became more daunting. Hunger gnawed at their bellies, and their supplies dwindled. The sun beat down upon them during the day, and the cold wind chilled them at night. Many grew weary and spoke of giving up, of settling in the neighbouring villages where life might be easier. But Kwame, ever the beacon of hope, would not let them falter. "My friends," he said, "we have come too far and already near home to turn back now. Our hometown lies just beyond the next hill. Think of the joy we shall feel when we stand upon its soil once more. Think of the legacy we shall leave for our children and their children after them." His words rekindled the fire in their hearts, and they pressed on, even as their bodies ached and their spirits wavered. Along the way, they encountered a deep river that had swelled with the rains, and there was no way to cross it without risking their lives. But Kwame, ever the problem solver, found a way. He led them upstream to a narrower crossing and used vines to fashion a rope bridge. It was a precarious crossing, but with Kwame's guidance, they all made it to the other side. At long last, after many days of hardship and danger, they arrived at the outskirts of their hometown. But what they saw filled them with both joy and sorrow. The town was overgrown with weeds and bushes, the houses were in ruins, and the once thriving market was now nothing but a memory. But Kwame, ever the optimist, saw not the desolation, but the potential for rebirth. "This is our home," he declared, "and we shall rebuild it. We shall clear the land, restore the houses, and bring life back to these streets. This is the legacy we shall leave for future generations." And so they set to work, clearing the overgrown vegetation, repairing the broken homes, and planting new crops. It was hard labour, but their hearts were filled with joy, for they knew that they were building something greater than themselves. As word of their success spread, others who had fled the war began to return. The town, once deserted, soon buzzed with activity once more. New families moved in, and the market thrived once again. One day, while digging in the fields, Kwame and his companions made a startling discovery. Beneath the soil, they found veins of gold and other precious metals. The news spread like wildfire, and soon the town became prosperous beyond their wildest dreams. But it was not just material wealth that they had gained. They had learned the value of courage, perseverance, and hope. They had overcome countless obstacles and had rebuilt their lives from the ashes of war. And in doing so, they had created a legacy that would endure for generations to come. As he sat by the fireside, he would tell them the story of their journey back to their hometown, of the dangers they had faced, and of the courage they had shown. "And so, my dear ones," he would say, "never forget the road that brought us home, for it was not the gold or the riches that made our town great, but the strength of our hearts and the hope that we carried within us." And with that, Kwame would smile, knowing that the legacy of their journey would live on in the hearts of those who came after them. Though the town thrived and prosperity returned, the journey back was not without lingering shadows. As the townsfolk rebuilt their lives, whispers began to spread of an unseen threat lurking in the nearby woods. Some spoke of strange lights flickering in the night, while others claimed to hear voices carried on the wind, voices that did not belong to any living soul. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kwame gathered the elders of the town in the newly rebuilt town hall. The room was dimly lit, and the flickering flames of the torches cast long shadows on the walls. "Good elders," Kwame began, his voice calm yet firm, "our town has flourished beyond what we could have imagined, but I fear that our journey is not yet complete. There are forces in these woods that we do not understand, and I believe they pose a danger to our people." The elders murmured among themselves, their faces etched with concern. Old Akoto, the wisest of them all, leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Tell us, Kwame," Akoto said, "what do you believe we must do?" Kwame stood tall, his gaze sweeping across the room. "We must seek out this threat and confront it before it can do us harm. I propose that we form a small group of our strongest and bravest to venture into the woods and discover the source of these disturbances." The room fell silent as the elders considered Kwame's proposal. Finally, Akoto nodded, a gesture that carried the weight of his years. "Very well, Kwame," he said. "You have led us with wisdom and courage thus far. We trust you to lead this expedition and bring back the answers we seek." The next day, Kwame assembled a small group of warriors, men and women who had proven their bravery during the journey back to the town. Among them was Amma, a skilled hunter who had once been known for her unmatched archery, and Kofi, a young but fearless fighter who looked up to Kwame as a mentor. As they ventured into the woods, the dense canopy of trees blocked out much of the sunlight, casting the forest floor in an eerie twilight. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves, and every rustle in the underbrush made the group tense with anticipation. For hours, they trekked deeper into the forest, following the faint signs that something, or someone, had passed this way before them. Strange markings appeared on the trees, symbols that none of them could decipher. The further they went, the more uneasy they became, as if the very forest was watching them. As night began to fall, they came upon a clearing where the ground was unnaturally barren, as though nothing had ever grown there. In the center of the clearing stood a circle of stones, each one carved with the same strange symbols they had seen on the trees. And there, in the middle of the circle, was a single, twisted tree, its branches reaching out like skeletal hands. "This place," Amma whispered, her voice trembling. "It feels wrong." Kwame stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "We must be cautious," he said. "There is power here, but whether it is good or evil, we do not yet know." As they approached the tree, the ground beneath them began to tremble, and a low, rumbling sound echoed through the clearing. The twisted branches of the tree seemed to move of their own accord, and a cold wind whipped through the clearing, carrying with it the faint sound of whispers. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in darkness and wearing a hood that obscured its face. The figure raised its hand, and the wind died down, the whispers fading into silence. "Who dares to disturb this sacred place?" the figure intoned, its voice echoing as if it came from all around them. Kwame stepped forward, his heart steady, despite the fear gnawing at the edges of his mind. "We are the people of the town that lies beyond these woods," he said. "We seek to understand the forces that reside here, for we wish to live in peace and protect our home." The figure seemed to consider his words, lowering its hand. "Long have I watched over these woods," it said, "and long have I waited for the return of those who once lived in harmony with the land. But the wars of men have tainted this place, and the balance has been disturbed." Kwame listened intently, sensing that this being was no mere mortal. "Tell us, Spirit of the Woods, how can we restore the balance and bring peace to our land?" The figure raised its head slightly, revealing a pair of glowing eyes that pierced the darkness. "The path to peace is fraught with trials," it said. "You must cleanse the land of the lingering darkness, and only then shall the balance be restored." With that, the figure dissolved into the shadows, leaving the group alone in the clearing. Kwame turned to his companions, his expression resolute. "We must do as the Spirit has said," he declared. "We shall cleanse the land and restore the balance, no matter the cost." The next day, Kwame and his group began their task of cleansing the land. They started by destroying the circle of stones and uprooting the twisted tree, casting it into a fire that burned with an unnatural blue flame. As the tree was consumed by the flames, the air grew lighter, and the oppressive feeling that had plagued the forest began to lift. As they worked, the forest began to change. The trees that had once stood twisted and barren now grew straight and tall, their leaves vibrant with life. The animals that had fled during the war began to return, and the once silent woods were filled with the sounds of birdsong and the rustling of leaves. The Spirit of the Woods smiled, a gesture that radiated warmth and peace. With the forest cleansed and the darkness banished, Kwame and his companions returned to the town, where they were greeted with cheers and celebrations. The town, now fully restored, thrived like never before, and the people lived in harmony with the land and each other. Kwame, now older and wiser, became a revered leader, guiding his people with the wisdom he had gained from their journey. He taught them to respect the land, to honor the spirits, and to remember the lessons of the past. He had faced many trials, both physical and spiritual, but he had emerged stronger and wiser for it. And so, as the sun set on his long and eventful life, Kwame knew that his legacy would live on, not only in the town he had helped to rebuild, but in the hearts of all those who came after him. The road to his hometown had been long and treacherous, filled with dangers and trials, but in the end, it had led him to a place of peace and prosperity, a place where hope, courage, and the human spirit had triumphed over all obstacles. Thank you so much for watching this intense and gripping story on African Tales by Imade. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments. And hey, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below so we can give you a special shout out in our next video. Don't forget to share these stories so more people can watch and learn. Until next time, stay tuned for more captivating tales. Bye, guys.